Who doesn't love it? Cute cat. Alright. Oh, is that what's happening over there? I don't even know. We should be seeing plenty of... Yeah, alright. Hey, everybody. Welcome back for another thing where I talk about marketing or crypto or trading or whatever. So, Stromboli crypto markets. I love a good Stromboli. As much or more than crypto. Why? Because it's like a pizza, but folded over. And you got all the good stuff inside. And it's delicious. Okay, the dough's good too. But don't make it too thick, huh? But yeah, no. Think about crypto markets like a Stromboli, right? You got all the base of the whole pie, right, which is the technology that it rests upon, blockchain or whatever you're using, right? There's many different technologies people use instead of just straight blockchain. They use fragmented stuff, they use DAGs, they use whatever. Any different kind that you can think of. They exist. They exist. And more shall exist, in all likelihood. So you got that base layer of technology underlying the whole thing. You know, think of it like, itty bitty is layer one, right? Or any crypto itself is layer one. And then layer two is all your, tomato sauce. Layer three is like the cheese. Layer four is like your, mushrooms, pepperoni, whatever you put on there. Onions, it doesn't matter. Right, so you got all these different layers. And then, slap on some meme coins and whatever else you want. Ordinals, runes, NFTs, all that stuff. Get yourself 4 or 5 layers. And you fold it up into a nice package and dump it onto an exchange where it can be bought, sold, or held, or shipped off of the exchange. And that's Stromboli marketing. And those are Stromboli crypto markets, basically, if you want to think about it that way. Maybe you don't. Maybe it's not a good metaphor for you. But I find it works for me. Why? Because I really like Stromboli, and I really like crypto, and I really like markets. Oh. And what are you supposed to learn from this? Hey, you're supposed to learn from this that there are many layers to crypto and crypto markets, and that you got to know at what point in the layer you are dealing with, no matter what you're doing with it, if you're doing anything with it at all. So, if you're buying or selling or holding, you should know, what is it you're buying or selling or holding? Are you buying or selling or holding an underlying asset, which is effectively called layer one? Are you buying or selling or holding an asset, which is layer 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7? And where along the line are you? What does that impact? How does that help you to reach your goal? Is it a useful service or product that you see yourself using, for days, weeks, months, or years, or decades? Think about the potential of any possible layer. Right? They all have theoretically limited lifespans, because everything does. Even in theory, even layer ones will have limited lifespans, right? And yes, I know we say Bitcoin will be around forever. Okay, maybe, but also maybe not. It could be that 1,000 years from now, people will have forgotten about it. Maybe less. Right? It could be 100 years from now, people have forgotten it. Who knows? Personally, I don't think so, but I think at least 100 years from now, people will still know what it is. Right? I think it has the possibility of at least outlasting the length of life of the fiat US dollar. Possible. There is also another possibility. And this is why, as bullish as I am, quote unquote, on Bitcoin, as much as I see it has strategic long-term value, and I really do think it does for a lot of reasons, it is also possible that something unforeseen will happen. Example, unforeseen things that could happen that could toss this whole market on its head, right? Of course, a solar flare. It's not even unforeseen. That's kind of an expected, that could toss this whole market on its head. And then anybody who has crypto has to use it by hand, which is still possible. But for most people, that would be extremely unlikely that they would do that, unless they had, a lot of money in it, in which case they probably would. But, once people are not able to trade it easily, it is arguable that it will lose its value very quickly, precisely because it's not easy to trade very quickly. It doesn't mean it wouldn't work. It just means it would be much harder for people to, maintain the ledger, obviously, because if it's distributed around the world, and you solve something here in your country, how is it going to get, solved in all the other ones? How are they going to know, right? Now, in theory, it wouldn't matter because the way the protocol works is you need to verify the transaction, and you do that by, code, algorithmic code, mathematical code that demonstrates what all the past transactions have been. But again, it would make it incredibly hard if we had to literally maintain a globally distributed network by hand in that way, right? So yes, a solar action could in fact wipe out all the computers, and then we would have to be, rebuilding civilization without the power of the existing computers. Now, in theory, there are a bunch of computers that are kept in safekeeping offline so that we could at least restart slowly rebuilding. And of course, those that have access to those computers, military, would have all the power because, well, that's how societies are kept relatively in peace, right? It's the ones who have the guns who maintain the peace. So, you can bet that there's a bunch of computers that are put into isolation every year so that they're kept up with the latest technology. They're pulled offline, and they wait until they're obsolete, and then they're moved out, and the new ones refill them. And there's a set number, but it's not a very large number, right? It's really, really not a very large number. So it would really be a very strictly controlled society where only a very small number of people at first actually have computers. And hey, once those things go, then what? You need to have computer manufacturing plants and all that operating again fairly quickly. And who knows how long that could take if all the computers that make those plants run would have to be rebuilt too. So that's one possibility that could wipe out crypto, at least temporarily, and make it really hard to use. The other thing that could theoretically wipe out the markets is if something totally different comes along, right? Something with an intelligently calculated number of units, and or mining, or expansion cycle, whatever you want to call it, so that the number of units available, right, in the max supply would do two things. One, it would only increase in the same way, for example, that Bitcoin is increasing to a max supply count. However, the way that it would do it would be actually more in line with the actual increase in population, and the number of units available would be kept, to a unit that is more proportional, or more inclusive, let's say. And it would, ideally, it would have to be programmed to be as such, limit the number of units distributable to a particular wallet, although you could tie wallets together for multiple, for purchases that require more than is contained in one wallet. And you could receive it in multiple wallets via a single address. That would be split once it hits that address. And part of the reason for doing this, although you can't really get around it, the idea is to limit or contain whale activity at first, similar to how Hex had this idea in mind that you would not allow Hex to mint, right? And you not allow whales to mint Hex at the original mint date. So if you had 10,000 Bitcoin or something in a wallet, you weren't allowed to mint, for the purpose of making sure that the only people that really got in are people that don't already have huge bags. And again, whales might be a little upset about it or whatever. The whole purpose of it is to give everybody else a chance. And it's not like you want to make something and then give every single person the same amount of it, because then there would be perceived less value. And the reason there'd be perceived less value is because partly humans are irrational and not always smart, so they don't necessarily understand things, even if you explain it to them. People are not always bright, especially when it comes to money, right? And B, because the fact is, it's like the old theory: if you gave everyone $1 million, then everyone would be paying, $10,000 for a slice of bread. Well, yes and no, not really, because it wouldn't cost you more to have that bread if everyone suddenly had $1 million. Okay. Now there are things where prices would go up more than they would normally do, because people would feel like, hey, everyone's got money, so I can charge more. Okay, maybe. But if everyone had a leg up and didn't have debts, right, then those who didn't suffer anymore could also do productive things at that point. But economists will argue, and they're not entirely wrong, even if you gave a leg up to everyone, there will always be an uneven distribution, because there will always be outliers who fail miserably. Whether it's their fault or not, there will always be people who are incapable of managing such success, such fortune, such wealth. Right? Even if you just raised them in a situation where they literally had everything they want forever and ever, they would constantly be burning through it. And we see this all the time, even with wealthy people. Right? There are plenty of people who grow up in places like Dubai or whatever, where $1 billion to their family is nothing, right? They have so much money, it's disgusting. They don't know what to do with it. Like, they'll go into a shop and spend $3 million on a car because they're bored. Car's not worth $3 million, but they'll pay $3 million for it because they want to spend money, right? The average person will never see that kind of money in their life, and can probably manage their money actually a lot better than the person who's born into ultra wealth and just wastes money like it's water, because they don't know what to do with it. They have limited thinking, right? They're just born wealthy, or got extremely lucky and became insanely wealthy, right? And they don't know what to do with it. And most people who are extremely wealthy will tell you that luck has a huge portion to do with it, and it really does. Which means, for the other 99.99999% of humanity, if you're not extremely wealthy, you shouldn't beat yourself up over it, because not everybody gets to be lucky. Right? Luck is what you make of it, but also luck is random. Okay? Good luck, good luck like that is random. It doesn't happen to everyone because it can't. Right? Because it's random. So that's why it would be nice to have, for example, a crypto like Bitcoin, where before it's actually marketed, meaning rather before it's brought to market, people are made aware of it first. And by people, I mean as many people as possible all around the world before it's even brought to market. So that, that old saying that Michael Saylor keeps saying, people buy Bitcoin at the price they deserve. Okay, that's a lie. Okay, lots of people don't have any Bitcoin and they never will. Most people will never have Bitcoin. It's not that they don't deserve it. It's because they either didn't find out or they can't afford to invest in anything, let alone Bitcoin. Doesn't matter if it's talking about buying a few Satoshis or buying whatever. Right? They can't afford to invest in anything. And yeah, you can tell them, well, you're investing in your future. Great, they can barely eat. Right? They might be starving. They might not have any food. They might not have any access to anything. No water, no food, and they're starving to death. And every grain and every ounce of water that they get from, some help program, some food aid program, is a miracle in and of itself, the way they see it. And you're talking to them about investing in Bitcoin? I mean, it's downright patronizing and offensive. And again, like generally speaking, I think Michael Saylor is awesome. And when he talks about Bitcoin and stuff, he has really great perspective. But when you say things like that, it's kind of disgusting. It's kind of like, let them eat cake. What Marie Antoinette said before the revolution caught up with her and she lost her head. When people are suffering, and there are billions of people suffering in the world, making light about it or making smarty, jokes about it is not a laughing matter, and it's not funny. There are real people really suffering and really struggling, and for crypto to call itself money for the people when most people will never have access to it is kind of disgusting. And I say that as somebody who has marketed cryptos that are specifically intended, as I say, for the unbanked. And they were designed for the unbanked. But even those had problems, which were known from the beginning and which were explained to the community from the beginning, that part of the problem is getting the unbanked to know about it, let alone to have access to it, even if it was made available to them for nothing. So that's part of what could flip this entire market on its head. I don't say that as a pessimist. I say that as an optimist who sees the potential for crypto to evolve into something better than it is. And yes, it's a wonderful market class, market asset class, whatever you want to call it. But it is still not perfect. And it has a lot of potential improvements that could make the world a more just place, a more equitable place, a place where people can actually have more of the asset that they want at a price that can actually afford, and it would still have value to people who have a lot of it, and there would be enough of it that it doesn't cause a FOMO panic bubble, which would then naturally be followed by a FUD panic bursting of the bubble. So the spikes would be more modest and the retracements would be more modest, right? Meaning the moves away from the mean to the upside would be more modest, and the mean reversions and then subsequently the means to the downside, the moves to the downside would be more modest. Why? Yeah, maybe that makes it less exciting of an asset. That's true. But it doesn't make it any less worthwhile of an asset if it's reliably, consistently a more modest growth line in line with things like real population growth, right? An actual cost of living growth, an actual inflation growth, right? all those things, if you actually calculated all those things properly, actual cost of living, not the fake one that all the economists use, recognizing that it's fake. If you put all those things together, calculated properly, the number of units necessary to actually have available, and yeah, you can say there's 21 million Bitcoin that can be divided by 100 million Satoshis each. That's great. I will still always make the case, nobody wants to buy, well, few people want to buy 0.0000001 Bitcoin. They may have no choice 10, 20, 30 years from now. But at the moment, and still, people want a whole Bitcoin. And if they can't have a whole one, they want, enough of a percent. It's ludicrous. Like, people want a whole unit. And I love it. It's great. It's fantastic. It's an amazing unit. It's an amazing Bitcoin. But to not have enough units, actual units, not divisible, not fractions of units, divided, by 100 million, to not have enough individual units for however many people actually would need it ever, really does draw away a lot from its appeal to a lot of people. Not to me, maybe not to you, maybe not to 100 million Bitcoin users, maybe not to another 500 million, but to the other 8 billion people, it's not yet very appealing. Why? Well, because people don't want a fraction of a unit. If they wanted a fraction of a unit, more people would have bought this stuff already. If there were, 21 trillion of these things, or at least 21 billion of them, but 21 trillion would be better, because then everyone could have thousands of them, then it would potentially have more appeal, more quickly. And you could say, well, then it's not limited enough. No, it could still be limited. Right? It could still be divisible into Satoshis. But then everybody would be able to have thousands of these things. And the concept of having, only a fraction of a unit wouldn't be a stumbling block to most people. Again, I'm not saying this would instantly make Bitcoin better. I'm not. Bitcoin is Bitcoin. But could there be another crypto that comes along with better mathematical formulas than this? And yes, I realize there are coins that have many trillions or insane numbers of coins, and it hasn't necessarily helped them grow, and etc. But the reason it hasn't helped them grow, etc., isn't just that. It's because most of the ones that do that are basically meme tokens. And that's the only difference they have, is the number of units, and they don't really offer anything necessarily wonderful. They just have a silly logo and a silly bunch of memes, and they're good and fun, and they're part of the culture, and ha ha ha, but they're not actually thinking long-term longevity, economics, and everything else that, like, Satoshi was clearly thinking about when he came up with the mathematical protocols of Bitcoin. Okay? And he did, or whoever Satoshi is, did a great job thinking about all that. But that doesn't mean that they can't be improved upon. Like, actually legitimately improved upon. And I know there have been some attempts at it. Again, Hex is one of them. Pulse is another one. Like, Hex was an attempt at truly improving Bitcoin. I was in the very first live stream of Hex, where it was ever first mentioned ever. I was one of many people in that live stream. I can tell you that from the very beginning, I understood exactly what it was for, and it did exactly what it was intended to do. And, so it wasn't a scam the way I saw it at all. And it was a very solid attempt at creating something that is in many ways better and more equitable than Bitcoin. From the beginning, it's built on RC. It's flaws because they're running on the Ethereum network. One of the biggest flaws of the Ethereum network is that Richard Hart, who created Hex, then went on to create Pulse and all of that ecosystem, which is basically Hex V2, right? And is eco-friendlier, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But I think the same kind of concept can be applied again, not as Pulse or Hex, but as a coin whose main purpose is to be more equitable and to be not disadvantaging people who aren't in on it early. And I get it. You want to create the hype. Like I would be doing something that goes against all of the principles in marketing as a marketer, which is devastatingly stupid and terrible. But I wouldn't be doing it to market it to be a marketing success. Right? As in many things in my life, I do them because I think the right thing to do. Even if they're technically not how you do things, quote unquote, the right way, academically or according to or whatever. The right thing meaning the just thing to do. Think Solomon and the baby. It wasn't about being intelligent. It was about being wise. Sometimes you got to do the wise thing, not just the intelligent thing. And I think it's about time that there would be a crypto that would be available to everyone, that everyone would know about, and that there wouldn't be a sudden land rush, a panic, FOMO, whatever, for everyone to get it immediately. No, it would be created in a way and distributed in a way that everyone can learn about it. Even if it takes a long time, everyone can still get their fair share of it, and there won't be gigantic whales sitting at the top that are that hold infinitely more than the people at the bottom. There should always be free market. Yeah, sure, there should be. But there isn't a free market in the world anyway. There isn't. Name me one market that's actually free. Bitcoin isn't free. Costs money to buy, therefore it's not free. Right? Costs money to mine, therefore it's not free. Not free market capitalism. And it's subject to more and more regulations around the world, therefore it's not free. It's free in many respects, right? But it's not actually free. And I know, maybe what I'm saying is a bit utopian and it's foolish and naive and whatever, and probably won't happen. To see that germinate that thought, to seed that thought, to plant that seed in the ether, no pun intended, so that people can think truly about creating a more equitable coin that is available to everyone after they found out about it. And after they understand how it works, people who are new and finding out about it tomorrow and the next day and the day after that, because that's when they are reaching the age of learning about it, that they will still have the opportunity to get in and not just have to have a little tiny fraction of a unit. Again, I think that is a huge, massive roadblock for the equitable distribution of Bitcoin. That's what lets a lot of whales collect more. That's what led already a lot of whales collect practically all of them down in the pool of dividing up basically a couple of million Bitcoin between 8 billion people. Or 2 billion people who actually or less than 1% of a Bitcoin. Then congratulations. Just get yourself 0.008 or 0.01 Bitcoin, and you'll be set. But for those who aren't satisfied with that, and who aren't satisfied with the fact that the whales basically own all of them, and there's really only a couple million left that are even on the market, and another million or so, 1.3 million or so to be mined. Like, don't get me wrong, I think it's an awesome asset. I talk about it all the time. But it is not equitable at this point. Not at all. Part of the reason is because whales were allowed to get into it. You know, banks were invited to join the party. That was a huge mistake. You know, you may think, well, it's good for the price of Bitcoin. Maybe it was good for the price of Bitcoin that banks got in on it early. But that isn't necessarily good for the average trader or the average person. The average trader doesn't care about the prices. The average trader cares about the percentage gains if they're actually a real trader, not just degen gamblers. You care about percent gains. If it moves back and forth, back and forth, back and forth between, 20,000 and 10,000, just does that all day, right? Or 20,000 and 18,000 even, or 50,000 and 40,000, or whatever the number's at. That's frankly better and easier for traders, right? Now, you might say, well, no, I want super massive gains, or whatever. Okay, I get it. You're a degen gambler. I get it. But a serious trader looks at things in the long term, like an investor does, and thinks, how many gains can I get from this thing? And what's the risk factor? What's the risk management like? How can I make gains from this consistently and reliably? If the answer is you can't really, then it's less interesting than if the answer is, oh, this thing just ranges constantly. Now, of course, you can't control the price action in that way, right? That's not how markets operate. But when you create an asset where the wealthiest people on the planet are allowed to dictate the price by, like any asset, by the way, by gobbling it up, you've just created yet another asset. It's not differentiated. And again, I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I think it's a fantastic asset. I'm very grateful that Bitcoin exists. It's wonderful. But let's not kid ourselves in pretending that it's so different from any other market asset, when it's really not, when you think about it in that way. It's all these wonderful things. From any other cryptos. So is every single fork of Bitcoin. Okay? The only difference between Bitcoin and any fork of it, direct fork of it, is the number of nodes that exist around the world. There's not really that many nodes run full nodes of Bitcoin. If you actually knew the number, it might shock you. When you consider this thing's been around for 15 years, and that the price of it is is almost $70,000. You'd think there'd be more earlier, which is what makes it not as appealing as people think. They view it as just another asset. They don't understand all of these other majestic, wonderful things, which, by the way, are also embedded in literally every fork of Bitcoin. So, again, don't think I'm a pessimist. I'm just opining about how these things might be improved. And it's not like Bitcoin can never be improved. We have, after all, some debate whether or not ordinals or runes are an improvement. I think the verdict is still out on that. I love ordinals. I think they're fun. Whatever. I don't love them, but I think they're great. I think they're fun. Runes or whatever. Fun. Ordinal opposite of Bitcoin on Bitcoin, like NFTs are the opposite of Ethereum on Ethereum. Or NFTs are the opposite of Solana on Solana. Well, Solana is a different animal, but ordinals are different because they're like the opposite. There's like unlimited supply, right? You can make as many as you want. Runes define number of runes for each collection. You set that number, but it's predefined. Like you set that number when you create one, but it's predefined, and it's like a max supply thing. And they're fungible in the same way that Bitcoin is fungible. So it's like a Bitcoin on a Bitcoin, right? And it's interesting. and yet they're considered less serious than ordinals. From the guy who made it, by the way, right? Called Armor, Casey. He considers ordinals to be a more serious innovative. Runes are just kind of fun. Runes are a lot more like Bitcoin than ordinals. The limited supply and all that stuff. All right, for now, happy cryptoing.